Hi all. When I first started sim racing during the lockdown, I had a pretty basic system and made my first rig out of some spare wood and an old IKEA desk. As time went on, I upgraded the components and realised that this rig was now not up to the task that I was asking of it, and I needed something more substantial. I upgraded the equipment I had and went to load cell pedals, an 8 Newton meter direct drive wheel, and I thought it was time to improve the rig that they were fitted to. I looked at aluminium profile rigs for inspiration, but decided to build the new rig from wood again rather than the aluminium. And there were a few reasons for this. One was the cost was lower to use wood, and secondly, wood is also far easier to get hold of and adapt to your needs than the aluminium profile. Originally, I designed the rig for my setup at the time, which included three 24-inch monitors. I will add a link to that video, to a video of that rig below. Since then, I've changed to 27-inch curved screens, and I have had to modify the original rig to suit them. The reason being that the wider monitors, more space is needed between the monitor arms. So as a quick fix on version 1, I just cut the arms around here and then refitted it behind to give me some extra space. But I was never happy with this temporary fix and always planned on redoing the rig and making a few other changes in the process. The main changes for version 2 were, to start with, I widened the base. This again gives more space here to allow the 27-inch monitors. The small pieces of wood that I used as feet, I've incorporated into the main vertical uprights. And then rather than adding in some pieces of wood here, which was an afterthought on version 1 for my 4th and 5th monitor, I extended the main vertical upright here to allow me to have a separate bar for 4th and 5th monitor mounts to be done. So this rig is built to my specs. To give you an idea, I am about 178 centimeters tall, which is about 5'10". If you are much taller or smaller than me, then some dimensions may need to be changed, but one benefit here would be to have a seat which is adjustable. If your seat is on sliders and you can raise it up and down also, then you should be able to get away with a pretty stock setting for these sizes and still be able to make it feel comfortable for you. Now, to build this, you're going to need a few basic tools and supplies. You'll need something like a power screwdriver, you'll need a chop saw, some wafer-headed screws, not just normal screws because they will not bite into the wood as well as these will. These really help clamp the wood together nice and secure and stop it from coming loose. Spirit level, which helps you get some of the pieces vertical. And then obviously you're going to need some wood. And in my case, I used 97 by 47 millimeter, which was the nominal size for 100 by 50 millimeters, or 4 by 2 if we're working in imperial. So to start with, for the assembly, take the 4 pieces of your base and then secure them with 2 screws going through each corner. Make sure they're nicely aligned, make sure everything's nice and tight because this is the part which you're going to build everything else off. Next, if you take 2 small pieces of wood and rest your frame on them, so the frame is now raised off the floor slightly, this will give you the perfect height to allow you to fit your first front vertical legs and leave a nice gap underneath to space off the floor. In this case, I've used 2 screws, one shorter one here going through this piece of wood and then just into here, and then the second piece down here is a longer screw which goes through this, and then goes into this other bar of the main frame as well, so it's nice and secure. Next, you need to add the small pieces at the rear for the feet to level the frame up. Now, you could actually take these screws out of the original frame and then screw through all these pieces of wood together to give a bit of a cleaner finish, but I didn't want to disturb my frame at this point, so I just placed this here and screwed through with extra screws. Next, you need to add the horizontal front sections. These are pretty straightforward. All you need to do is screw them in with 2 screws from the top, nice and securely. The longer screws, obviously, because we're going through the longer section of the wood, but that should give you a nice tight finish. Next, it's time to start adding the tall vertical sections. I start by doing this by securing it with one screw through to the horizontal piece we just added. Then, using the spirit level, make sure that this is perfectly vertical, and when you're happy that it is, use 2 screws to secure into the bottom frame. Again, this section becomes our middle leg, so this will go all the way down to the floor. Repeat the same process for the other side. Now we can add the 2 front sections that will be where the PC sits. 1 screw in each of these should be more than enough, depending on the kind of case that you have, or whether you want to mount your PC vertically or laid on its back will determine where you decide to place these, but there's plenty of scope there depending on how you want to do it. Now it's time to start adding the monitor supports, or monitor arm supports. We start off by taking the first piece of wood of this and sitting it onto the frame here. We then need 2 small offcuts. With these offcuts, we just place them on top. This piece here, the bottom piece, can be secured into place, 2 screws at each side going through. Once we've got our offcuts in place, rest our top monitor mount for the rear on the back of these, and then secure this in place here as well. Leave the pieces of wood in place for the time being. These do not need to be screwed in or anything else. These are purely as a size guide or a jig to make sure that we get just the correct spacing to allow us to put the monitor arms through this small gap here later in the process. Next, we need to do the same with the front. So again, I have the 2 small pieces here acting as a jig. Rest the top piece in the correct position on top of those 2 pieces of wood and secure with 2 bolts at either side, and then repeat the process, putting the bottom monitor arm support bracket across and fixing again with 2 screws at either side. What that should give you is something that looks a little bit like this, and now we've taken away the 2 pieces of wood that were acting as our jig. Also here I've added in the top bar, which is the 4th and 5th monitor mount section. Again, if you are not using a 4th or 5th monitor, you don't necessarily have to add this section, and you could make this vertical a little bit shorter. But if you are adding the monitors, take a few measurements before you put this bar in place, just to make sure it's roughly in the right place for where your monitors will sit above your main gaming monitors as well. Now it's time to start sliding in your monitor arms. Now these will be a tight fit because of the way that we've created this support section here. We know that this gap is the same size as the wood, so you may need to tap these in gently with a hammer to make sure that it goes all the way through both the front 2 sections and the rear 2 sections as well. Repeat that process for both arms, but don't fix these in place just yet because we'll need to be able to move them later when we're trying to realign the monitors. Next, I added the 2 pieces of wood for the pedal plate. Now, depending on your pedals, you may need to adjust this slightly. I originally fitted these in line with the vertical sections, but when I came to sit in the rig, I realized they were not quite right for me, so I've actually moved this one further back to maybe around about here. Then you can fit your pedal plates or pedal system onto the wood and just drill or screw directly into it for a very strong fix. Next stage would be to do the same with the seat arrangements. Now, for the seat, it's important that you measure between the actual seat slider rails to determine exactly where your pieces of wood need to be. And I just made these pieces fit exactly so that the screw holes are roughly in the center of each piece of wood. But take a measurement on your particular seat and then you can decide how you want to do it. Again, having a seat that slides is very beneficial because you can get a perfect placement for where you want to be. Once you've done that, you can then fit the seat, and suddenly it starts to look a little bit like a sim rig, sort of. And we get into the position where we can start now thinking about how we're going to add things like the monitors and other things as well. From this stage, the next part, I fitted the pedals. After I'd moved the wood to suit the pedal plate and my personal preference of where I wanted the actual pedals to be, I just raised these up slightly with some rigid nylon washers, again just to suit a perfect position for the size of my legs, and then just secured these with 4 of the shorter screws. This then gives a very, very stiff, rigid base for the pedals to be. You can hit the pedals as hard and as fast as you want, and nothing moves whatsoever. It's perfectly locked in place. For the wheel deck, there are a few options. You can take two pieces of the standard wood and join it together from the front and from the back to make a deeper deck. Then you can add a small piece underneath, which acts as an extra support. I took a slightly different approach because I had a piece of wood which was around about 8 inches deep, or 200 millimeters already. So I managed to just put this in one piece, and then I secured it with 3 bolts at either side. This needs to be very, very rigid because this is where a lot of the torque will go through from your wheelbase. At this point, I actually didn't add these small under support sections, but I went on to do so when I tried it because there just wasn't as much strength as I needed without having those on. But they're very simple, just 2 small offcuts fitted underneath, and then it can be screwed from here and here down vertically, and it gives a very, very stable base for your wheel. When fitting the monitors, you'll need a small piece of wood. In this case, it's 30 centimeters or around 12 inches, just to fill the small void here. This is difficult to screw from underneath because I've now added the wheel deck, but two of the long screws from the top is more than enough that's needed to hold this in place. From then, I decided I would fit the keyboard mount. This was probably the most complicated part on the whole build because I wanted this to be angled in 2 directions. I wanted it to be slanted so I could see the keys, but I also wanted it to be tilted towards me as well. This actually is not quite right. This was about half of what I was trying to achieve, and I've gone on to make this a much tighter angle now, so the keyboard is a lot closer to me. So some trial and error is needed there. To get the keyboard exactly where you are, but once you can do it with a single cut and then just a couple of screws, you'll have a perfect keyboard mount. And I just used the feet on the back of the keyboard, folded over, which hold over this rib here, and then I screwed through into the back, and now the keyboard is very, very secure. Next, I added my mount for my wheelbase. This one is from Track Racer, and it's designed to take the Fanatec CSL DD wheelbase that I have. This was quite nicely done in a way because I could use some spacers and the long screws and just screw into the wheelbase screw into the wood underneath directly. This is then a very, very rigid base for the wheel to go. Obviously, if you have a different wheel, or maybe something like a Logitech or anything with a desk mount, this standard piece of wood is also still a perfect base to slide the wheel into place and lock in with the self-locking systems like the G25, G27, G29s have, for example, as well. Give you a very good base to work off. For the monitor mounts, I use these. These were from Amazon. They were quite cheap, and I like these because A, they were cheap, and B, they had the built-in level, so it just made my life easier when it came to positioning them on the brackets in question. So once you've got the first center monitor, you can start working then on the second one. I went to start on the left one. It might take a little bit of trial and error to get this done. I had to lift the monitor on and off a few times and then slide it around and try and get the position correct. But within about 10 minutes or so, I got it where I needed to be. Now, remember, this arm isn't fixed in place yet. It's supported. It won't fall off because it's going all the way through the monitor brackets here. But we need to keep it loose because we can then be able to twist the monitor bracket in or out to be able to make our monitors line up. But we can also slide this in or out with, again, to just make sure the monitors line up nicely. If you're using straight monitors, I think it will be a lot easier. With the curved monitors that I used, it just added an extra complexity of trying to get the 3 lined up nicely. But in the end, we got there and all was good. Once you've got the monitor arm in the place that you would like it, you can then secure it from the top with a screw all the way down through, and it will go through the 2 and then possibly into the 3rd one as well, so it gives a nice strong fixing. And what I also recommend is, because this monitor arm continues all the way through to the rear, which I think you can just about see here, also place a screw here, and that then will stop the monitors from pivoting if you do happen to stand up and catch them, for example. If you only have one screw in here, then it might start to twist a little if you were to catch it. But if you have two anchor points, then there's no way that it can actually shift, and the monitors will stay perfectly where you want them to be. Then it's just a case of repeating the process for the other side. Here I have also mounted the 4th and 5th monitors for my monitor mounts for my 4th and 5th monitors. These have also been angled down slightly so that I don't have to look up too far when I'm driving to see what's on these screens. Many people won't want 5 screens, for example, maybe 4 or even just the 3, but I like to have my main racing screens, a screen up here dedicated to OBS, and then this screen I have things like my telemetry, the full race standings, fuel, etc., all showing on this monitor as well, so I can see all the information I need. But again, your personal preference will determine how you do it. Next, I use a small piece of wood and just secured it to the wheelbase section here, and this is what I use to mount a tablet holder to. And then I have an iPad, which I use as a button box, and that's now facing towards me, angled quite nicely, and I can get to all the buttons and things that I need. And I also wanted to make the cable management as tidy as possible. I'm never too critical on cable management, I just want it to look tidy. And in here I used some 15mm plumbing pipe clips, which I've just screwed directly into the frame, and then you can clip all your cables into them, and it makes a much neater job. So at the moment the main power comes in from here, power cables come up, everything else goes across here and up, and then we can basically use the void where we have the monitor supports as a very handy space to hide or distribute all of our cables. These curved monitors, for example, have a power brick. So rather than having the power brick just taped or secured somewhere on here, all of the power bricks are actually hidden within this section here. And I also have a small 4K Dell dock, which is also hidden in there, and that powers the 5th monitor as well. So it just keeps the system looking quite nice and tidy. So what does this all cost? Well, a lot of that will depend on everything that you may already have. Here I've listed everything that was used in this particular build, and then obviously you can just subtract whatever you wouldn't need. For the wood, I used the 100mm by 50mm or nominal size 4x2 inches, or its nearest equivalent. And in total I needed around 21 meters, or around 68 feet, and that's around £2.80 per meter at my local costings. The screws I used 2 different sizes. Again, they're flanged wafer heads that give a very, very strong connection. I got 2 packs of 50, but I have quite a lot left over. So you do need the 2 sizes, but you don't necessarily need 50 of each. But it's worth having a few spares. The cable management we just talked about, they're just 15mm pipe clips. For the monitor mounts, I needed 5, but again, mileage may vary on this one. The seat I already had, but this came from a second-hand, a breaker's yard of a Volkswagen Golf, and I can easily position that and get it where I need to be. And then things like the pedal plate, you may or may not need depending on the pedals that you have. My previous pedals were Fanatec CSL, and they had a built-in pedal plate which I could just screw directly to the frame, which was no issue. And you may or may not need a wheel mount depending on what wheel you have. Again, all the Logitech wheels have quite a good desk mount built in, and that would fit perfectly onto this wheelbase that we created here, and it could still give you a very, very strong solution. So the total price, if you had to buy everything, assuming you already have the wheels, pedals, monitors, etc. at PC, is around about £270 or €320 or around about $335. Again, your prices will vary based on local availability, and these prices are converted as of June 2024. For me, I already had a lot of the items. It was a lot less, and the cost for the wood, for me, it was just the cost of the wood, the screws, the cable clips, and some new monitor mounts. So for me, it came in around about £140 or €170, or around about $180, which I think is pretty good value for something which offers this much support and rigidity for a multi-monitor system like this. So there we go. Thanks for watching. If you need any more information, just drop me a message either here or any of these other sites listed below. Let me know if you're going to give this a try, and also let me know if you think of any improvements that could be taken, and let's start thinking about a version 3, and we can start planning that one. So thank you for watching if you did, and see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.